Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is lecture number 30th. The name of the paper is Literary Criticism 1. The name of the book is On the Sublime by Longinus. The topic is the sources of sublimity. There are 5 sources of sublimity. Out of these 5 sources, today we will discuss one topic from the power of forming grand conception. So the power of forming grand conception, which is the first source of sublimity, is a very long topic. Therefore, we will subdivide this topic into different lectures. Today, we will discuss this point, the first one, the first source of sublimity, which is the power of forming grand conception. We will do the explanation. In the next lecture, 31st lecture, we will then discuss how can grand conception be made more effective, and there are again 4 subtopics, and they will be divided and subdivided into different lectures. So today we will discuss the sources of sublimity, and in the 5 sources of sublimity, we will take the first one, which is the power of forming grand conception, which can be discussed under a lot of certain topics, certain subtopics. The first one is its explanation. So we will do this explanation first. This lecture is specifically for the students of BS English 5th semester GDC PABI, and it is also for the students of those colleges which are affiliated with Abdul Wali Khan University. So this is the topic, the sources of the sublime or the sources of sublimity. There are 5 sources of sublime or sublimity, as I told you. The first one is called the power of forming grand conception. We will discuss it. The second is the powerful emotions, the intense emotions. These two sources of sublimity are the product of nature, which means that they cannot be learned. The poets are born with these qualities or not born with these qualities. So these cannot be achieved with practice or with hard work. They are natural. They can be improved, of course. They can be made more effective with the help of these other 3 sources, but they cannot be created. The next 3 sources are the sources which are the works of art and which can be learned. The third source is diction, which refers to the use of words, figures, which refers to the figures of speech, as you know, and the fifth one is composition. So these are the 5 sources. We are taking them one by one. The first one is the power of forming grand conception. So as I said, these last 3 are the works of art, and they can be acquired, they can be learned with the help of knowledge, with the help of reading, with the help of practice. They can be learned, but the first 2 cannot be learned. We will take the first one and we'll discuss its explanation. As I told you here, only this one. We'll discuss its explanation in detail. The power of forming grand conception is the first source of sublimity, but what is that power which forms grand conception, and what is meant by grand conception? This power of forming grand conception is actually a reference to imagination. That is, you as a poet should have this power of imagination so that you can get the best type of idea, the grand type of idea, not the petty or small ideas. For example, Pope wrote The Rape of the Lock, and though the words are very big, the style is grand, but the conception is not great or grand. It is just a petty or small topic, that is the cutting of the lock. So this would not be the source of sublimity. According to Longinus, he tells us that grand conception can be made with the help of certain power. That power is the power of imagination. If that imagination is strong, then you will be able to have grand conception. If it isn't, then sublimity will not be achieved. This is, as I said, the most important source of sublimity, this grand conception. And the power of grand conception, as I said, it refers to imagination. Because imagination is important, the function of imagination is that there is reality, for example, and on the face of this reality, there are different veils. For example, there is the veil of falsehood. If falsehood is removed from the face of reality, then you would be able to see reality, and this veil of falsehood can be removed with the help of imagination, with the help of the power of thinking, of getting grand conception. Therefore, imagination helps to see reality. If we want to see reality, we will have to use imagination, and with the help of imagination, we will remove the veil of falsehood on the face of reality, and as a result, we will be able to have a look at the reality. This is what the poet does. The poet uses his imagination, according to Longinus. He removes this veil and he enters reality. According to Longinus, uh, only that person can have grand thoughts or grand vision or grand idea of man and his nature who has intense imagination, who has very powerful imagination. And if that powerful imagination is missing, grand thoughts and grand vision will be difficult to achieve. This power of imagination, which is the first source of sublimity, is related with the second source of sublimity. If you have a look here, the second source of sublimity is the powerful emotions. So there is a relationship between the power of forming grand conception and the emotions and passions. These two are related with each other. The use of imagination removes the veil of falsehood from reality. You see the reality. But this reality, when it is seen, it causes or it excites your image, your passions and your emotions. Therefore, the first quality uh, of grand conception of imagination, it is related with the second source of sublimity, and that second source of sublimity is strong passions and strong emotions. So whenever we go deeper into the reality, now you should know that this is with reference to mysticism. In mysticism, um, for example, in our Sufism also, the best type of prayers is the one in which you are able to see God. If you are not able to see God, at least you can think this much, that God sees me. So God sees me would be the lesser quality, though it would be the part of grand conception. That degree will not be 100%. The degree will be 100% when you pray and you see the reality. By the reality, here we refer to God. So reality means God. So as you go deeper into the reality, that is, when you go deeper into the understanding of God, you are removing the veil from the face of reality with the help of imagination. And when you see, though not fully, you see the face of reality or the face of God, then it arouses passions, strong passions, and strong enthusiasm and emotions in you. So you can see they are related. Imagination removes the veil from reality. You see the reality. This reality, when it is seen, arouses strong emotions and enthusiasm in you. Therefore, they are related. And as you go deeper, by deeper we mean as you go closer to the reality, closer to God, these emotions become slowly and gradually more intense. And then the final stage is reached. You know, the final stage, as I said, is the one in which you become with the one with God, which is in Arabic called jazab. You become one with the one, and the knower and the known difference vanishes. That is the final stage. This is what is in our Sufism or in mysticism. In mysticism, the main purpose is to become one with the one, that is Jazab, and there are then degrees of this closeness to God. If you are less close, the passions will not be that much intense. But when you become very close, passions become extremely intense, and the final stage is becoming one with the one. When we talk about the knowledge of the known, the knowledge of God, then there should be two personalities, the knower, that is you, and the known, that is God. So there is duality in this process of knowledge, but in the final stage, this distinction, this difference between the knower and the known it vanishes, because it is not duality which is important, it is the unity. You become united with the one, and as a result, the seeker becomes one with the sought, the knower becomes one with the known, and this is what is meant by mysticism. Also, in our Sufism, this is the main idea which is referred to as Sufism. The poet, therefore, as Longinus tells us, is a kind of mystic in some sense, but of course, there are degrees of this mysticism. The one who is one step closer, second step closer, third step closer, and then the one who has reached the reality. So, therefore, the mystic or the poet, as he goes beyond the surface, he finds different universe. I mean, that veil is removed from him. His eyes, which were open but were not open, now becomes open, and he sees what is there beyond the surface. And he passes through different stages. He ultimately reaches the reality and becomes one with the one. This is the process followed by the mystic. The poet also does the same thing, but the poet does this through words, through language, and he may not go as deeper as the mystic, because the mystic's main purpose is to become one with the one, but he may go one step ahead, two steps ahead, or three steps ahead. To some extent, he goes deeper into the surface. When the poet goes beyond the surface, when that veil or the first veil is removed, at this stage we say that the poet has got the grand conception. The grand conception or the grand idea of God, or the grand idea of things. Now, if this grand conception is achieved, when the face of reality is seen, it is accompanied with emotions, and this happens because he sees everything in its true nature now. When he becomes one with the one, he sees everything in its true nature, in its real nature, and as Wordsworth tells us, the poet is then able to see God in a flower, or he hears the voice of God in songs of birds, and therefore grand poems are written with such strong enthusiasm, that is, emotions and passions. Wordsworth therefore calls poetry a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings or emotions. The it is spontaneous poetry because you do not have to work hard for it, because it's a natural ability. It comes naturally to you. So therefore, it is spontaneous. It comes on its own. It is not forced. It is the overflow of powerful feelings, because once you see the reality, you get the powerful emotions and feelings, and you get them so much that these powerful emotions overflow, and this overflow actually is poetry. So he calls poetry the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, and then he tells us that these are recollected in tranquility. For example, Wordsworth saw daffodils. This There were powerful emotions and feelings aroused for daffodils, but he did not write daffodils right away. He came home, and then he thought about that incident when he saw the flowers, and then he recollected, he was reminded, and he was in tranquility. He was sitting in his bed, he was in calm condition, and he was reminded of what he saw when he was in the field. when he was reminded with the power of imagination, those emotions which were there in the first place, they were aroused again, and they were aroused so much that he was filled with them, and not only filled, there was an overflow, and this overflow was the was what is called poetry, and then the poem was written. So therefore, with such emotions, the flower no more remains a flower, but it looks something different to you. It you look to it in its true essence. This happens when the poet is filled with emotions, and emotions is the second source of the sublime. We are discussing the first source, the power of forming, um, the ability to think or imagination. Longinus gives examples from great writers for the illustration of this first point, that is imagination, which is the first source of sublimity or the power of forming grand conception. He tells us that this power of forming grand conception or imagination is related to the greatness of a writer. If this power of imagination is great, the writer is considered great or sublime, and whatever he writes is also great and grand and sublime. So that poet, according to him, is a great poet who has great thoughts, who has great vision of man's struggle, who has great vision of the different conflicts the man passes through. That poet, which who actually uses his best type of imagination, then becomes a grand or a great poet, and his poetry then is full of sublime. Longinus tells us that sublimity echoes the great soul or the noble mind. It means that when you study poetry, when you read poetry, and it has sublimity in it, this sublimity is actually the echo of the great soul of the poet. It is the soul of the poet which is reflected in the writing. It is the noble mind of the poet which is reflected in his writings, in his poetry. So only that poet can become great whose soul is great, can write sublime poetry, and great soul is the one which is psychologically great and which is morally great. By psychologically great, we mean that the poet must have powerful personality. This is what we mean by psychologically great, that he must have deep sympathy, and that he must have genuine sympathy with the people, genuine sympathy with the creatures. If he does not have sympathy with the creatures, he will not be able to understand man or other creatures. So this is the psychological greatness which is important for writing grand poetry or sublime poetry. He must not be a man who indulges in small things. He should be involved in great things. If he is involved in small things like cutting of the log, then he cannot have grand conception. So psychological greatness refers to great vision, great thoughts, sympathy, but this is not enough. This psychological greatness, there should be moral greatness in the person writing poetry. For example, number one, he should not be given to temptation of senses. He should not be the slave of senses. If he is the slave of senses, he cannot be a great poet. He should keep himself away from temptations. This is the first quality of the moral greatness. And secondly, he must not have a great attachment with money. He needs money, of course, everybody does. That is okay. But extravagant attachment with the money will make him slavish to the money, and this is not the sign of greatness. So that man is not great who considers money as God and who respects another person because of that money. So this was all about this first, not all about it, it is just a topic about this first quality, which is quite long and which is very important, and which is the power of forming grand conception. The power of forming grand conception refers to imagination. अब हम इसको उर्दू में पढ़ेंगे. टॉपिक तो हमारा ये है दी सोर्सेज ऑफ सब्लिमिटी, सोर्सेज ऑफ सबलाइम, जो यहाँ भी हमने किया। अब सोर्सेज ऑफ सब्लिमिटी तो 5 है, जिनमें से पहला हमने किया पावर ऑफ फॉर्मिंग ग्रैंड कंसेप्शन। इसके फिर सब टॉपिक्स हैं, तो एक हमने ये किया एक्सप्लेनेशन, यहाँ तक ये बाकी के लेक्चर्स में हम करेंगे। तो इसको जरा उर्दू में सुने। हमारे पास सब्लिमिटी के सोर्सेज तो 5 हैं। एक है पावर ऑफ फॉर्मिंग ग्रैंड कंसेप्शन, कंसेप्शन से मुराद है आइडिया, और दूसरा है इंटेंस और पावरफुल इमोशंस। और ये दोनों जो है ये प्रोडक्ट ऑफ नेचर हैं, ये आप हासिल नहीं कर सकते, ये आप इम्प्रूव कर सकते हैं डिक्शन के थ्रू, फिगर्स और स्पीच के थ्रू, कंपोजिशन के थ्रू। ये 5 सोर्सेज हैं। तो ये आखिरी जो 3 सोर्सेज हैं ये आप आर्ट के जरिए एक्वायर कर सकते हैं, नॉलेज और रीडिंग के जरिए एक्वायर कर सकते हैं। तो जो पहला सोर्स है वो है पावर ऑफ फॉर्मिंग ग्रैंड कंसेप्शन। पावर ऑफ फॉर्मिंग ग्रैंड, जबरदस्त, कंसेप्शन, आइडिया, ये कैसे बनेगा, इस किस पावर से बनेगा, तो उस पावर को हमने कहा इमेजिनेशन, और ये पहला सोर्स है सब्लिमिटी का। अगर आप चाहते हैं आपकी पोइट्री में सब्लिमिटी हो तो आपकी इमेजिनेशन, बेस्ट टाइप ऑफ इमेजिनेशन होनी चाहिए, ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है, और ये नेचुरल एबिलिटी है, ये आप सीख नहीं सकते। पावर ऑफ ग्रैंड कंसेप्शन से मुराद है इमेजिनेशन, क्योंकि इमेजिनेशन ये रियलिटी के चेहरे से पर्दा हटाती है और हमें रियलिटी तक पहुंचाती है, हमें हेल्प करती है कि रियलिटी तक पहुंचे। तो ग्रैंड थॉट्स और ग्रैंड विजन और ग्रैंड आइडिया ऑफ मैन एंड हिज नेचर, ये तब होगा जब आपकी इंटेंस इमेजिनेशन होगी, जबरदस्त इमेजिनेशन होगी, कुदरती तौर पर हो, जिसको आप सीख नहीं सकते। तो ये जो पावर ऑफ फॉर्मिंग ग्रैंड कंसेप्शन है, इसका ताल्लुक सेकंड सोर्स से है, जो कि पैशंस और इमोशंस हैं। क्योंकि एक पोएट एक मिस्टिक की तरह होता है, जो कि अल्लाह ताला को जानने की कोशिश करता है। अल्लाह ताला रियलिटी है, तो ये जितना डीपर जाएगा इस रियलिटी में, तो इसको इसकी इमोशंस ये अराउज होंगी, पावरफुल और स्ट्रांग इमोशंस और इंथुजियाज्म अराउज होगा, और ये जितना करीब जाएगा अल्लाह ताला के, तो इसमें इतने डीपर इमोशंस और पैशंस अराउज होंगे। और फाइनल स्टेज किसी सूफी का और या किसी मिस्टिक का, वो टू बिकम वन विद द वन, अल्लाह ताला के साथ एक हो जाना है, और डुअलिटी, दो खत्म हो जाना है। तो नोवर जो कि आप हैं, द नोन जो कि अल्लाह ताला है, उसमें जज़ब हो जाता है। और ये लॉन्जाइनस का आइडिया है, और ये मिस्टिसिज्म में भी है। तो नोअर और नोन का जो डिफरेंस है फाइनल स्टेज में वो खत्म हो जाएगा। लेकिन जाहिर है हर पोएट जो है वो इस हद तक नहीं पहुंच सकता, वो कोशिश करता है रियलिटी को पहुंचने की। जब सरफेस से अंदर जाता है और समझने लगता है, तो हम कहते हैं अब ये ग्रैंड कंसेप्शन में दाखिल हो गया है। तो पोएट जो है इस लिहाज से मिस्टिक है, मिस्टिक सरफेस से नीचे जाता है, स्टेप बाय स्टेप आखिरी और अल्टीमेट वन तक पहुंचता है। पोएट ये काम करता है वर्ड्स और लैंग्वेज के थ्रू। इतना डीप जितना मिस्टिक जाता है वो नहीं जा सकता, हो सकता है न जाए, लेकिन जब वो सरफेस से अंदर घुसता है और रियलिटी की तरफ सफर करने लगता है, तो हम कहते हैं इसमें ग्रैंड कंसेप्शन मौजूद है, इसमें इमेजिनेशन है। अब पैशंस और इमोशंस भी अराउज होंगे, और उस वक्त आपको फिर कहता है कि ऐसा पोएट ये फ्लावर में गार्ड को देखता है, और ये परिंदे के नगमे में गार्ड की आवाज सुनता है। और ग्रेट पोएम जो है तभी लिखा जाएगा जब इस किस्म का इंथुजियाज्म आप में हो। वर्ड्सवर्थ हमें बताता है कि शायरी दरअसल पावरफुल इमोशंस और फीलिंग्स का ओवरफ्लो है, और ये ऐसा ओवरफ्लो है जो खुद ब खुद होता है। और ये भी वो कहता है कि ये जो पोइट्री है, ये दूसरी तारीफ है, ये रिकलेक्शन है ट्रैंक्विलिटी में इन पावरफुल इमोशंस। इट इज इमोशंस रिकलेक्टेड इन ट्रैंक्विलिटी, जिसकी वजाहत अभी मैंने की कि उसने डैफोडिल्स देखे, इमोशंस अराउज हुए, इमोशंस वापस चले गए, फिर ये घर आया, बिस्तर में बैठा, ट्रैंक्विलिटी में सोचने लगा, फिर इमोशंस अराउज हुए, इसने पेन उठाया और पोइट्री लिखी, اور یہ پوئٹری اوورفلو آف پاورفل فیلنگز تھا. تو یہ تب ہوگا جب آپ میں ایموشنز اراؤز ہوں گے, انتھوزیازم اراؤز ہوں گے, لیکن یہ اراؤز ہوں گے تھرو امیجنیشن, دی پاور آف فارمنگ گرینڈ کنسیپشن. لانجینس مختلف رائٹرز کی ایگزامپل دیتا ہے اس السٹریشن کے لیے, اور وہ اس کو ریلیٹ کرتا ہے گریٹنس آف دا رائٹر کے ساتھ, کہ یہ تبھی ہوگا جب رائٹر گریٹ ہوگا. وہ رائٹر گریٹ ہوگا جس میں گریٹ تھاٹس ہوں گی, گریٹ ویژن ہوگی, مین اسٹرگل کے بارے میں, کانفلکٹس کے بارے میں. پھر وہ ہمیں یہ بھی کہتا ہے کہ جو سبلیمٹی ہے یہ ایک بڑے سول کا عکس ہے. تو بڑا سول جب ہوگا یعنی پوئٹ, تو تب یہ عکس ہوگا, یہ نوبل مائنڈ کو ریپرزینٹ کرتا ہے. پوئٹ آف گریٹ سول جو ہے وہی سبلیمٹی پیدا کر سکتا ہے, اور یہ سول گریٹ تب ہوگی جس میں سائیکولوجیکل گریٹنس ہو, جس میں مارل گریٹنس ہو. سائیکولوجیکل گریٹنس کا فائدہ یہ ہے کہ اس میں سمپتھی ہو, اس کی پرسنالٹی پاورفل ہو, کیونکہ سمپتھی کے ذریعے وہ لوگوں کو سمجھ سکتا ہے, گرینڈ ویژن اور گریٹ ویژن لوگوں کے بارے میں پیدا کر سکتا ہے. لیکن مارل گریٹنس کے لیے ضروری ہے کہ وہ سینسز کی ٹیمپٹیشن سے اپنے آپ کو آزاد کرے, اور وہ پیسے کی عشق اور محبت سے اپنے آپ کو آزاد کرے, پیسے کو وہ گاڈ نہ سمجھے. تو یہ تھوڑا سا حصہ ہوا, اگر آپ اس کو دوبارہ دیکھیں تو دا سورسز آف سبلیمٹی 5 ہیں. ہم نے پہلے سورس کا تھوڑا سا حصہ ڈسکس کیا, یہ باقی حصہ باقی کے لیکچر میں انشاءاللہ ڈسکس کریں گے. تھینک یو اینڈ گڈ لک.